Today we will be covering a very special sutta. It is one that has been always pushed to the side with respect, given its tremendous significance and seemingly, simplicity in its look, in its and brevity. It's very short compared to the other suttas that we have done. It is the Kāḷakārāma Sutta, and it is a significant sutta because it's deceptively simple. So it's not that simple, given on the outside it might seem that way, but it's not, because it's an extremely deep discourse, very important discourse within all of the entire teachings of the Buddha, because it touches upon, addresses the theme of emptiness and voidness, sunyata patisamyutta, actually, term goes. But before we begin, seeing that it's not a very, very long sutta, it's only about 2.5 pages compared to the 40-page, 60-page suttas we've covered so far. It is Kāḷakārāma Sutta is basically a discourse that the Buddha gave to a group of bhikkhus who were staying at the Kāḷaka Monastery. Let's first be introduced as to how this place came about, the Kāḷaka Monastery. It starts actually with Anathapindika's own daughter, Chula Subhadha. She was already a Sotapanna. Like her father, actually the whole family became noble disciples. But Chula Subhadha, when she reached the age of marriage, her parents wanted her to, they arranged for a marriage, as it was the custom. And the person that they chose for her, his name was Kāḷaka of Saketa. Saketa was a region, a different place than Savatthi, of course, not too far, but so the son of a very, very wealthy, in modern standards, like, billionaire, basically. So he was very wealthy, but the problem was she happened to be the student of Lord Buddha's, while her husband now was a student of Nigantanatha Buddha, the Jain leader. So he was a Jain. So in time, the wife convinces him to at least give an opportunity to the Buddha to hear a discourse from the Buddha, and so he does. And upon hearing the Buddha's discourse, we don't know exactly what theme it had, the discourse, but upon hearing the discourse from the Buddha, he becomes a devout follower of the Buddha, and he drops Nigantanatha Buddha, the Mahavir, that's how we know him, the head of the Jain religion, pretty much, who was a contemporary of the Buddha. So to commemorate this great event, because he was extremely wealthy, what he did was he basically built a very fancy monastery, loads of money, because he also knew that his father-in-law had done so in Savatthi, the Jetavana monastery. So he also built one in Saketa, and that's the name that we get for the sutta, Kāḷakārāma. Ārama means a monastery. Kāḷaka means Kāḷakas, just like we know Anathapindika's monastery. This became Kāḷaka's monastery, Kāḷakārāma. So that's where the name comes. So you had, after it was built, you had about 500 bhikkhus who were sitting there in the gathering hall, and they were talking about, wow, look at the amazing ability of the Buddha to be teaching the Dhamma in such a way that a person who was such a devout follower of someone else becomes, he relinquishes all that because he's seen the Dhamma, and on top of that, he donates this. So we're living proof. We're in this. We're living this reality, which is extraordinary. So they were discussing this amongst themselves when the Buddha comes out of his kuti and he approaches them and he says, "What were you, bhikkhus? What were you discussing?" Which was, I wouldn't say strategy, but it was a common custom of the Buddha to do. Oftentimes when he would come out of his kuti in the afternoon from his seclusion, he would approach the gathering hall or the assembly hall, and he would discuss, he would want to know what the bhikkhus were discussing. So and then the Buddha gives this discourse. We've seen this also, if you remember, in the Brahmajala Sutta as well, how the bhikkhus were discussing, but they were full of contempt about the heretics who were talking badly about the Buddha. And the Buddha began discussing or giving the discourse on Brahmajala Sutta, the 62 wrong views that people hold on to. So coming back to this sutta, the commentaries say a few things about this sutta, in fact. And it has an unusual, I would say, past history. This sutta itself was enough to affect so many people who came to listen to it, or were exposed to it. Because given its seemingly simple way, or the expressions that the Buddha, we will see, expresses the Dhamma, teaches the Dhamma to the listeners, might seem that, oh, it's a no-brainer. It's like, yeah, but it's far deeper than that. In fact, this was given by in India after the Buddha's death. There came a time when, we call it Great Alexander the Great, he came all the way to what we have, Afghanistan. Eventually his generals divided his empire into several pieces. So one of them, the groups, stayed in that region. What we have today, Uzbekistan, Afghanistan, of course, Pakistan, and also Punjab in India, northwestern India. So they came all the way down to the south of Hindu Kush. They crossed over. This was after Alexander. But that area, Gandhara, so that region, was called as the kingdom of the Yonakas. You see that in the commentaries, Yonakas. Yonaka is the Pali or ancient term for Greeks. So that land that area, that huge area, became known as the Greek kingdom. That's where we have also the Milindapanna and King Menander. He was he's one of those rulers in time. But anyhow, why do I mention the Yonakas? Because the commentaries mention the Yonakas. Why? Because we had the Venerable Arahant Maharakkhita, who went on, he was assigned actually by Emperor Asoka when he was sending out to all areas outside of his kingdom monks on a mission the earliest missionary work that we see was when we see monks going and teaching the Dhamma into vast corners outside of India, beyond, like West Asia, and some even say even to Europe. So one of those monks was Venerable Maharakkhita, who went to the land of the Yonakas, in this case, northwestern India, Punjab, Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, that part of the world. And he taught them this same sutta, the discourse. And the commentaries make a special note that acknowledges the fact that the Yonakas, the Greeks, were highly acknowledged for their analytical thinking, their intellectual prowess, if you will, in those days. They came from the tradition of, obviously, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, all these, Epictetus, etc. So they had this knack, the ability, the curiosity to probe, to understand. And they were highly, highly interested in Buddhism, in the Dhamma, because they knew this was different. They knew this was not the ritualistic in those days. So people had actually looked into what is the different religions of these areas, these people. So they were very curious. Unlike other, conquering nations that went here and there in those times and afterwards. So after the Venerable Maharakkhita finishes the discourse, the commentaries say 37,000 Yonakas attained the various fruits of the Noble Path. That meant, we don't know if they had arahants. If it's, the different fruits, possibly, why not? But here you had a large group, and they're very specific, 37,000 people. So that can tell you about the gathering that was there. So you had Sotapannas, Sakadagamis, Anagamis, possibly even Arahants. So that also puts a little bit of pressure on us to be approaching the theme of today with a little bit more of a curiosity. I'm sharing all this information with you so that you can allow the room necessary, the space necessary for you to approach it, to understand what the Buddha is actually talking about when he is declaring his knowledge, yet with detachment. So can we approach with those points in mind? So without further ado, I would like to okay, here we are. So it's from the Kāḷakārāma, it's from the Book of the Fours, Chatuka Nipata of the Anguttara Nikaya, the numerical discourses. So at Kāḷaka's monastery, that's the English. So AN 4.24, the 24th sutta from the Book of the Fours. Let's begin. At one time, the Blessed One was staying at the Kāḷaka's monastery in the region of Saketa. There, the Blessed One addressed the bhikkhus and said, this is those 500 bhikkhus gathered there. Bhikkhus, in this world, together with its devas and humans, its Mara, its Brahma, and the community of religious practitioners and Brahmins, whatever that is seen, heard, experienced, cognized, looked at, and pursued by the mind, all these things I know. Bhikkhus, in this world, together with its devas and humans, its Mara, Brahma, and the community of religious practitioners and Brahmins, whatever that is seen, heard, experienced, cognized, looked at, and pursued by the mind, all these things have been fully known and thoroughly seen by the Tathagata for what they are. Yet none of them affect him, nor have any hold on him. He's referring to himself. The Tathagata, whenever the Buddha says the Tathagata, he's referring to himself. That's an epithet, it's a title of a Buddha. So he just made two declarations. He said, in this vast existence, with everyone, everything included in it, whatever that is seen, heard, experienced, meaning sensed, smelled, tasted, touched by the body, or cognized, known by the mind, and pursued by the mind, drenched into by the mind. All these things that people come to know, that, all of that, I know. But then he says, in the second paragraph, all these things have been fully known, past participle, and thoroughly seen by the Tathagata. But there's a caveat at the end. He says, but despite all that, none of it affect him, nor have any hold, grasp on him. So bear that in mind. We'll come back to those in a minute. However, bhikkhus, if I were to say that in this world, together with its devas and humans, its Mara, Brahma, and the community of religious practitioners and Brahmins, whatever that is seen, heard, experienced, cognized, looked at, and pursued by the mind, all these things I do not know, then that would be a false statement on my part. So he's saying, if it so happens that I were to say all these things I do not know, then that would be a lie. I would be misspeaking. I would be saying something that is untrue. And we all know that the Buddha's, anybody on the path, anybody who's a noble disciple even, cannot lie, let alone the Buddha. So this is, if you allow these words to really go deep enough to sink in, don't be fooled by their simplicity. There's depth here. So all that is experienced, all that is thought, all that is pursued by the mind, all these things, if I were to say that I do not know, he says, that would be a false statement. There's two more he's going to say. Bhikkhus, if I were to say that in this world, together with its devas and humans, its Mara, Brahma, and the community of religious practitioners and Brahmins, whatever that is seen, heard, experienced, cognized, looked at, and pursued by the mind, all these things I both know and do not know, then that also would be a false statement on my part. If you remember from the Brahmajala Sutta, for example, also the Samanyapala Sutta, the one after that, where we were introduced to the various thinkers of the Buddha's time today, philosophers, and people who advocate for ideas. And one of them in particular was the eel wrigglers that the Buddha mentioned. Those who would say, well, it could be this, it could be that. I am both this and I'm both that. Well, now you're saying this. Yeah, I agree with you. But by the way, at the end of this conversation, I will also tell you that I don't agree with you. So things of that nature, confusing statements, indicates that the person is a charlatan. The person is basically pulling your leg, sounding interesting, sounding intriguing, sounding somewhat sophisticated, but essentially saying nothing other than creating confusion and perplexity for the listeners. So those are the people who would say yes and no at the same time. Modern day philosophers, most famous journalists and leaders of countries, they're notorious in this. And that's a thing that they think that it is actually indicative of being highly intellectual or highly, smart. Meanwhile, it's the other way around. It actually shows the person's stupidity, which they're covering. They've just learned some tricks. So here the Buddha is saying, if I were to say that all these things I know and I do not know, basically to cover my tracks, to cover my, protect myself from any argument, then that also would be the same, a lie. And that's another reason why people create this fake narratives. And if that's the case, how can you go and debate with such a person? How can you go and say you're wrong when the person is saying it's both this and that? So they're covering both fronts, which is basically cowardly. You have to be able to say what is. You have to stand for something, in a sense, right? That's what society says. But the interesting thing here is that the Buddha goes even after that, holding a stand on something. That's when things get a little bit, the brain cells all of a sudden have to work a little bit harder. What? What's wrong with holding a stand or having a stance on something, having a position? Remember the Buddha in the first statement, he said, all this I know. But in the second paragraph, he said, all this has been known, understood fully, completely by the Tathagata, but despite all that, none of it has a hold on him. But before adding more to that, let's continue with what Buddha says next. Bhikkhus, if I were to say that in this world, together with its devas and humans, its Mara, Brahma, and the community of religious practitioners and Brahmins, whatever that is seen, heard, experienced, cognized, looked at, and pursued by the mind, all these things I neither know nor do not know, then that too would be a false and an unqualified statement on my part. Because you had the opposite of I know and I don't know. So this takes it to another level of creating confusion in the listener. Again, this was one of those characters we've seen in the Brahmajala Sutta as well, where you had individuals, you have, in fact, to this day, people who will never tell you their position. In fact, they will use a negative language to demonstrate that. So instead of saying I know or I do not know, they say I neither know nor do not know. All of which, again, the Buddha says categorically would be still falsehood in me. I would not be speaking what is true. We have to be speaking the truth. But our relationship to the truth, that is interesting. That is what we need to pay close attention to. Here the Buddha is talking about detachment. Being able to see things for what they are and look at the relationship which we have with that thing, with whatever it is that is what we're considering to be true, whatever we're seeing that is true. the relationship to that is very key. Oftentimes we hold on to something, we hold up something, and we hold a position in regards to something. We are replete, we are so full of sankharas left and right, good and bad. You know, sankharas don't just come in as a good physical, as bad physical or bodily sankharas, verbal sankharas, and mental sankharas. They don't just show up as bad habitual drives or dynamic patterns, which is what I like to use now because it gives a clearer image of sankharas instead of just habitual drives, which is what they are too. But we also have the positive version of that, of sankharas, which the mind says, well, these are positive, so I have to be rooting for these, vouching for these, standing up for these sankharas. I have to say this. I have to think this, for example. But sankharas are sankharas, whichever way you cut it, and they are simply distractions. They are an extra burden that are holding us from full awakening. So look at the attention that the Buddha is giving to our attitude. He is holding a detached attitude, despite the fact that he's saying to us, I know, I have fully understood. But none of it do I hold on to. How many figures in history have we ever come across? How many religious figures have we come across in world history, world religions, who reached their pinnacle of understanding, whatever it is, but could have the audacity to say such a thing? I am detached from that. I have never come across such a thing, and I've spent most of my life studying religions, my entire life, actually. I was just from a little kid. I've never seen someone who says, I know, but he says, that doesn't have. I'm not attached to it. I'm not glued to it. I don't identify with it. That is key, that word, identification. We identify with things. We think that by the mere fact that we're identifying it, it becomes more real, more pertinent, more true. It's the other way around. But let's see what the Buddha says. Therefore, bhikkhus, on seeing a visible object, the Tathagata does not imagine it being something that is separate from the seeing itself. When the Buddha sees something, he doesn't imagine it to be something that is separate from the seeing that is occurring here. But what do we do when we see something? We automatically give it a persona. We automatically give it a character. We automatically objectify it as a thing that is there, and me, I, the seer, is here. So there is now a relationship. A me that is here, an I that is here, and a you that is there, or it that is there. And all the dilemma starts. We've just put two pegs in the ground and a string that goes and holds on to both. And we're stuck. Because now we have a relationship with it. We have to hold on a position towards it. It exists for us. What? So we're far away from the reservation at this point. We've gone far beyond the mere reality of seeing itself. It's no longer a seeing. And then he continues, the Tathagata does not imagine a thing that is yet to be seen. So he doesn't think about, imagine a thing that is going to be seen. which requires you to start, we call it manjana, it's imagination comes in. You start visualizing, you start hoping, you start fantasizing, you start dreaming, you start hoping and expecting it to be seen. Because there's a relationship. There's an it over there that is waiting to be seen. We're waiting for the conditions to be right for us to see it. Also, he does not go on imagining a thing that is worth seeing, the Tathagata, nor does he imagine there being a seer, the one who is seeing either. Do you see how intricate this is? He does not go on imagining that there is a thing worth seeing. This addresses all our passions. This addresses all the rough material which we use to build our stories, to give meaning to things around us in our lives, to say that's a foe, that's a friend, to build stories around that, to have a position, to hold on to those positions, to identify with positions. This is all part of the understanding that needs to take place in order for us to relinquish Sakkaya Ditthi, to relinquish our doubts, to relinquish our hopes and aspirations that through ceremony and rites and rituals and conducting these things, rituals, somehow we're going to attain. None of it will do it. They are actually supposed to be dropped. So understanding is key. Wisdom is key. It is through wisdom and seeing our responsibility in creating these personas versus just looking at the seeing itself and just leaving it that. This is the same teaching that the Buddha gave to Bahya. Bahya, when seeing, just see. When hearing, there is just hearing. When sensing, there is just sensing. When an object is known in the mind, a mind object, a thought, an idea, something pops into your mind, don't turn it into a thing. Observe it and see it as simply a thinking, a cognizing, and that's it. Don't build on anything on it. Don't bring anything. Don't add anything to the equation. He says the Tathagata also does not become identified with the one who is seeing. Similarly, on hearing an audible sound, the Tathagata does not imagine it being something that is separate from the hearing itself. So now he's going to the other sense. Hearing, it was earlier seeing, now he's talking about hearing. He does not imagine a thing that is yet to be heard. Imagining. Anticipation. What does anticipation do for us, to us? Agitation. Imagination. Manjana means it's like that marble or marbles inside of an empty box with the lid on. You close it and you shake it. Every time we have a thought, every time we have something going on in the mind where an idea, that's what I mean by something, a mind object that we're chewing on, processing, trying to figure out. We're trying to make sense of things. We're actively engaged. And we're no longer seeing that whole process as it is, like in the case of hearing. It's too sophisticated, sophisticated as it were, because it's far easier for us to say, oh, I am the hearer, the one who's hearing, listening, And that over there is the source of what it is that I am hearing. It's very juvenile. It's like a child sitting there and pretending to have a kitchen or playing house. You know, fake cups, fake plates, fake spoons, fake kitchen, tiny little thing, and everybody is playing in. Everybody's playing the role of we're pretending to be playing it, or like building a tent inside the house and pretending that you're out there in the woods. The mind likes to stay in those lazy states because it doesn't require much, and it is very amusing when we are interacting with these things, these phenomena that we create, in a sense. It's a lot. The lazy mind, sees the just hearing as boring, when it is anything but. Because it likes to get into a fight, into an interaction, into an agitation. Because the mind itself, is far more used to being in commotion than to experience tranquility and quietude. That is why many people, if not most people, face difficulties when they meditate. Because it's far easier. We are more acclimated to confusion. The hindrances, we see them as our own kin, our own blood. We don't look at the hindrances such as sensual desire, anger, hatred, aversion, basically, sloth, drowsiness, procrastination, restlessness, worry, and doubt. We don't look at these really on a visceral level as things that are harmful. That's the problem. However, we look at them as our buddies, as our, we don't see what they're really doing. That's why we get up from our meditation sooner than later. We don't like to stay in quiet states. We look at those as boring because of our identification. That is at the bottom. Tammayata is the Pali word. Atammayata is the non-identification, is a title given to an arahant who is no longer identified. And that's what the Buddha is talking about here. Non-identification. Also, he does not go on imagining a thing that is worth hearing, nor does he imagine there being a hearer, one who is hearing, either. Thus, by not becoming identified with nor absorbed into the audible sound being heard, the Tathagata also does not become identified with the one who is hearing. So when the Buddha is talking, of course he's aware he's talking. When someone's speaking, the Buddha asks a question, someone's speaking, the Buddha is hearing. He's aware of it. But at no point does he make the person to become somebody out there from this person, this somebody down here. There isn't that. So this is also teaching us to come out of the matrix, to come out of living in delusion, from the dream state, to become real. Now, what does this have to do? A simple question might come up. How do you fit this, Bhante, to sati and sampajanya? To be mindful and with awareness, full awareness. It's the same. If you're truly mindful and fully aware, it's impossible for you to become identified with anything. Ultimately, because you will see, for you, the jig will be up. You will see all these tricks. If you're truly mindful, if you're truly aware, That means you're aware of the body, you're aware of the feelings, you're aware of the thoughts, the perceptions, you're aware of the tendency to create stories, papanchas. You're aware. Sooner or later, it dissipates. The glue will come off. The glue will disassemble. The things, the pieces will fall apart. The aggregates will come off. There's nothing to hold on to. But that doesn't mean that you're not aware of these things happening. So the Buddha, becoming an arahant, he was aware of all these things, but he did not hold a position. He did not become identified. Now, this is not about a Buddha necessarily. That has to also be said. This is about us. One day we too will be attaining if we continue on this practice proper. But what does that mean? We need to look at the various states that we undergo, not from a future date onwards, but from now. Even now, you're hearing my voice, speaking, saying words. You have to look to see if there is any position holding in you, if there's any attachment towards anything that is taking place, which indicates manjana, imagining in us. What does that mean? That means when you're imagining something, there's a tendency to be grabbing also, holding on to things. And this birth that we have is because of grabbing. Bhava comes about, the desire to re-become, because of our wanting to grab, upadana. So to maintain the identification with something, there definitely is grabbing going on. So check to see where it is, this thing called you grabbing onto things. What is it that you're grabbing? When is it that this occurs? But if there is no sati, you won't be able to see it. That's why don't expect the Dhamma to kick in one day in the future. That future will never come, let me tell you. It will never come. If you're hungry, you go to the grocery store, you go to the supermarket, you go down somewhere, you actually go buy things, you get things, and you come back and you make yourself a meal. You eat it. That takes effort. To be here today, to listen to the sutta, you had to wake up, you had to get ready, you had to be present, you had to click some buttons, and here you are. But you have to physically be here also, not fall asleep. You have to make sure that is also there. It takes effort, which means there has to be the interest to listen to the Dhamma. There has to be the drive, the fervent desire to ask yourself why. To listen to the Dhamma requires that very first step. And then even if you don't have that fervent desire, drops of it, you need to add. Because something else is happening in your life. There's suffering. There's confusion. There's uncertainty. There's disappointments. That's where the Dhamma comes in, to heal the wounds. But it doesn't do it. It's not one-sided. We have to bring the Dhamma into our life. We have to apply it. Where is it that I am attached? Where is it that I'm holding on to something? What is it that I'm holding on to? What is it that I'm identified with? So you see, it's not about wearing robes or going on retreats, whether you're a layperson or a full monastic. It's very tempting for us to fall into a groove of things, and we just think that we are practicing, we are studying the Dhamma, we're living the Dhamma. It's very easy, it's very simple. So long as we're in delusion, that is. It takes effort to really see if you are identified even with the Dhamma, some principle of the Dhamma, or find yourself in one role. Probably you've read or listened to some things and you're like, yeah, that's who I am. You've switched clothing, you've switched robes. You're no longer hearing, just hearing. Also, on sensing or experiencing an object, be it a smell, a taste, or a touch, the Tathagata does not imagine it being something that is separate from the sensing itself. He does not imagine a thing that is yet to be sensed, whether smelled, tasted, or touched. Also, he does not go on imagining a thing that is worth sensing, nor does he imagine there being a sensor, one who smells, tastes, or touches either. Thus, by not becoming identified with nor absorbed into the object being sensed, the Tathagata also does not become identified with the one who is sensing. When Uttara, the young Brahmin who had left his teacher on an assignment, his teacher gave him an old monk, over 100 years old monk. His name was Brahmayu. That's where we get the Brahmayu Sutta from the Majjhima Nikaya, the middle length discourses. What was it, 93, 95, 92? Anyhow, Brahmayu Sutta. In it, Uttara, the young Brahmin, was following the Buddha for an extended period of time, at least 6 months, watching him closely, how his behavior was towards things, the daily life. He was observing him when people came to the Buddha's presence, when they were talking and he was listening when the Buddha spoke. When the Buddha moved, walked from place to place, walked into a room, let's say, or exited a room. But especially when he was eating. Uttara says, when the recluse Gautama tastes food, it's not like he doesn't taste it, or he doesn't know if it's sour, sweet, bitter, whatever, salty. He tastes all those things. And he knows all those tastes, flavors, but nothing stays with him. None of it does he take a position on. None of it does he become identified with. None of it he takes with him, in a sense. And that was just in reference to flavors, tastes. He had other senses too, smell, touch, etc. So there was a detachment in him. But that, because this is I might come across as beating on the same point again and again, but this is a major hurdle that we all face. And many people have this confusion about detachment and not being attached, or some people have said, I've heard people say that, or completely lopping themselves off from reality, or refusing to taste, for example. Well, I'm not supposed to taste. Well, that's another type of an attachment. And you just took a position now. The Buddha is not saying that. He's not saying don't see, don't hear. But when you're seeing or hearing, don't take any of it with you. And on knowing the cognizable object, the Tathagata does not imagine it being something that is separate from the knowing itself. He does not imagine a thing that is yet to be known or cognized. Also, he does not go on imagining a thing that is worth cognizing, nor does he imagine there being a knower or a cognizer either. I use the example of the Dhamma, but it could be even seclusion, something as lovely as seclusion, or sila, living with virtue. People become identified with these things, and they think that that is the living of the holy life. And that is not. That's why I have to correct people sometimes when they come in and they have a wrong view about the practice. They think sila is the thing. Well, you turned it into a thing. Sila is beautiful, generosity is beautiful, but they're interconnected, Your state of mind says it all, because you could easily turn sila into your own religion, into your own type of practice which you identify with, and something happens, doesn't work out, you are completely frazzled, you get stuck, you're lost in uncertainty, you are agitated, you suffer. And sila is not there to make you suffer. Sila, living with virtue, is not there to cause pain and suffering to either to yourself or to others. No, it is there to really protect you, to keep you safe, really allow you to grow. There is no pain there, there is no suffering there. But when we do attach ourselves to it, identify with, yes. I've seen people wanting to be benevolent or kind or generous, but in my observation of them, I would see that they start to belittle one another or cause harm or antagonize or somewhat demean the other person. No, that's not how you put the flowers over there. That's not how you're supposed to bow to each other. No, you have to bow this many times in front of the bhikkhu. They would be surprised when I would stop them and I would say, listen, please, don't bow because it's a ritual. This would happen a lot in Asia. I would stop people, and they're not used to that. Many people who come in because they've been taught. And I would just say, no, that's not how it works. It has to start from the heart. You really want to do it out of love, out of being in the moment, and fully engaging in it without holding a position on it, because it compels you. It's like, it's love. So the ritualistic side of things goes out the window. And it's no surprise that when a person becomes a sotapanna, one of the first things to go out the window with the trash is one's reliance on rites and rituals. And people don't like to hear that. And I would say, well, then you're going to have a hard time if you want to become a noble disciple or become a sotapanna, yet still be attached to your ceremony-loving behavior, thinking that rituals will somehow save you, somewhat get you closer to Nibbana. They will not, because of your attachment. Now, if it flows out of you, if you feel like chanting, bowing, lighting the candles, lighting the incense, and doing this with so much mindfulness, so much sampajanya, so much metta, then what other people do around you really is of no significance. You are completely detached from those because you are living saddha. You are living them. You're no longer attached to rites and rituals then. There's no way. Just like the Buddha was not attached to the flavors that his tongue was touching. Thus, bhikkhus, the Tathagata is such, being totally unaffected as it relates to things that are seen, heard, experienced, and cognized, for he is unshaken as such. Tadi, the term is in Pali, tadi. Remaining unmoved and stable in regards to all such things. Unaffected, unmoved, suchness. Tadi. Why is he unmoved? Because he's unattached, unidentified. If you tie your neck, if you tie your leg, if you tie your body to a rope and you put a spoke in the ground, a pole in the ground, and you tie yourself around this anchor, however long that rope is, you still will be attached. It's like a boat that is on the dock, tied up, and you're sitting in the boat and you keep rowing and it doesn't move after a certain point. The rope will not allow the boat to take off. And that is where we are most of the time, whenever there is Dhammayata, the identification. So we relinquish identification, the boat can be set free and reach its destination. So long as there is attachment, the Buddha is saying, forget about crossing over and reaching the other shore. Because attachment itself is the biggest hurdle. Even wanting to attain liberation, freedom from suffering, that itself, unless we keep checking on it, that too can turn into an attachment, which we saw in the raft, if you remember, and from the Kāḷakārāma Sutta, where the Buddha used the Dhamma, he used the simile of the water raft that the man builds with, branches and twigs and things and twine, and he actually builds himself a raft to cross over. But once he crossed over, did he put it over his shoulder and walk around with the boat? No. That still is playing. The theme is still here, looking at us. Therefore, he is unshaken as such, remaining unmoved and stable in regards to all things. This I declare, because there is no one who is higher, more noble or truly excellent than this such like one, in point of suchness. And then he says these words: amidst those who live while entrenched and drowning in their own views, who witness all that is seen, heard, experienced, and cognized as being true, the Tathagata, however, because of his suchness, goes on declaring that there is really nothing to grab or hold on to, nor to claim as either true or false at all. Yet, this generation of beings is hooked while being tightly stuck and impaled upon the sharp barb that goes on insisting, I know, I see, this is how it must be. However, the Tathagatas, having fully liberated themselves from the barb, neither entertain nor construe any claim by taking a stand upon a position or a view, are thus unlike those dogmatic view holders who take their stance on this or that position, while grabbing tenaciously onto their views they so cherish. Sound. The barb, the sharp barb. Have you ever seen, wire, those sharp barbs on a fence? They're very sharp. No matter how you try to hold on to it or try to avoid it, it will, some part of you, some clothing is going to get stuck on it. Imagine if it's your soft tissue, your skin. And the Buddha is using the example of a barb. It's a hook. And it says this generation of people are hooked on that. They're impaled, skewered by it. By what exactly? I know that sense. I know. I see that drive. This is how it must be. That is the epitome of Sakkaya Ditthi, of making this personality view. And that's one of the reasons, one of the primary reasons, obviously, why the Buddha challenged the whole status quo of his day to this day by saying anatta in his declarations. Characteristics of existence. Anicca, dukkha, anatta. Anatta is what? It's the opposite of our constant quest, imagining that there must be someone here, that there must be something here that has views, that has thoughts, that has thinking, that my persona, my personality, what I like, and what I like things to be, how I want them to be. All problems of relationships cease when a person understands anatta. The absence of a substantial self or a soul or some type of a unchanging personality somewhere within you or within others. It's the opposite of that, anatta. Anatta is giving us freedom. It's cutting the cord, setting us loose from that sense of identification and making us become atammayata, the opposite, the non-identifying with anything, which can allow us to be free. In another place, the Buddha says, lighten the load, Bhikkhu, empty the boat. Once it's emptied, you will go much faster. Any identification, anything, including the Dhamma itself. Remember, the Buddha is addressing his knowing. But he's saying also that I'm not attached to it. I'm not holding on to it. In contrast, everyone else of his contemporaries were saying, like the Jain leader Mahavir and others, they were coming up, they were telling their own students, oh, I know everything. Purana Kassapa, Mahavir, and others, Moggali Kosala, they were saying, oh, I know. Or even Sanjaya, the previous teacher of both Upatissa and Kolita, Venerable Sariputta and Mahāmoggallana, their previous teacher, Sanjaya, was saying, I know. Well, go and ask them if that knowing that they had was something that they were able to also relinquish immediately the moment they said it. Absolutely not. They were very much hooked. They were very much impaled by their own views, by their own attachments. So that's the sutta. I told you it's a lot shorter than other suttas that we've done. But it's also worthwhile to know that at 5 different places when the Buddha was giving this discourse, at 5 different occasions, one after the other, the earth shook. The earth shook. There was an earthquake 5 times as this sutta was being discoursed, given to the bhikkhus. And you might like to also know that those 500 bhikkhus all became arahants on hearing it. So, which is lovely. Imagine the power of such a discourse. Again, it's not just the power, it's with what presence, intensity, interest, drive is the listener there while being exposed to a teaching like this. So sometimes we are trapped in the wrong thinking that says, oh, it's the teaching. I've had people who approached me over the course of time, even when I was teaching Dhamma as a layman, they would come and try to get new information of the Dhamma. It's like, what do you expect? Like, what are you looking for a secret teaching? That as if all that I've shared with you was not the real deal. I've been hiding something and that's what you're after. Now you're asking me in a different, it's all there. But the question is, how am I approaching the Dhamma? How am I listening to the Dhamma? Am I taking a a position, a holding of a, stance on, because that means rigidity. It goes against the spirit of the Dhamma. It goes against everything the Buddha taught. Rigidity also means a denial of anicca, refusing to see anicca, because the person is lost in vipallasas, distortions of the mind, corruptions of the mind. They're looking for the beautiful in what is essentially ugly. They're looking for the stable and unchanging in a changing, conditioned world. It's like people who go and put makeup. Well, what are you hiding? Especially putting makeup on a dead person. They're dead. Who are you trying to fool? That they have rosy cheeks as they're laying in their casket, a few minutes away from being cremated or buried? Who are we fooling? So our attachments are all over the place. So it's worthwhile to, again, it's not fair for us to just read this sutta once, as you can tell. This is one of those suttas that we have to go again and again over, and there's so much to be extracted, so much more. But I will stop here and see if there are any questions, comments, thoughts.
I suppose I can add something, Bhante.
Yes.
Thank you, firstly. What a great sutta. Um, yeah, the first thing that came to mind was the potency, and it was almost prolificating what it was teaching, what the sutta was teaching in terms of the attachment. But what struck me was finding the balance between, I think you mentioned it, someone's come to you before about the detachment element. So I suppose what was coming to me was the differentiation between being nonchalant and almost sort of disregarding in the moment as opposed to detaching. How can you discern that? Or when would you start to be able to, at a subtler, finer level, be able to differentiate between the actual detachment from the sense, whether it's hearing, sight, and then just being blasé, nonchalant, if that makes sense. It's difficult for me to explain, but I feel like it's that fine because I can almost bring myself to that state where I'm only hearing the sound whilst understanding the meaning. But I don't know if I'm just, you know, making it, whether I am detached or whether I'm just sort of convincing myself that I am, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Very good. If I may rephrase your question, perhaps it would be like, would there be a rubric, a test, some way of knowing whether I am on the right path? Of am I going in the nonchalant path, or am I? How would I know? Are there any signposts? Are there any signals that could warn me? In either way. Would that be? You're
Yeah,
nodding.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
As you were formulating your words, I was struck by an image when I was riding a bicycle, teaching myself how to ride a bicycle, because in my childhood and teenage years I couldn't, because I was injured, and I didn't have the ability to, and I didn't have the money to buy a bicycle. So later on, early 20s was when I taught myself how to ride a bicycle. But it was already, you're big, you're 6'5", and heavy, obviously, and you're like, okay. What I noticed was I was holding the handlebar so tightly, and with the handling of the holding it so tightly, the handlebar, my upper body at least even my neck was so rigid. And I was trying to enforce my position on the seat, trying to say, no, 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 let the legs move on the pedals, and you just maintain that. And guess what? I would fall like a very rigid object, along with pulling everything with me. And later on, when I was able to move with a little bit less rigidity, I noticed I was moving and traveling, but I started noticing how there would be a pole, a thin metal pole in the park or somewhere, that would be very far from me, not in my line of, in my path. Yet somehow I would end up riding the bicycle and going straight at it and hit it and fall, crash and fall. And that was very, funny, and at the same time confusing. So I was afraid of the pole, because I was, no, don't hit the pole, don't hit the pole, don't hit the pole. The pole is not even on my path. It's several meters to the left, let's say. And then I saw it's my fear of falling. It's my fear of letting go. I wasn't allowing myself to become loose around a handlebar. There was a lack of trust. There was fear. So, which was creating a tremendous agitation in the mind, obviously. So already these are indicators. These are like those signposts that came to mind when you were saying those, the question. And if there is, even if you're nonchalant about something, maybe that's not the proper word to describe this non-attached state, because there's wisdom through and through. You're totally mindful. You're totally present. And the mind is not leaning this way or that. It's where it's supposed to be. But it's not stiff. It's not rigid like my hands were on the handlebar. It's like another image would be like the circus acrobats, especially when they work on the high, I think they're called high ropes, something like that. When they go swinging, they would hold a handlebar, and it's tied up to something higher. So they go from swinging from one to the next. But I always would look at these acrobats as they're about to go from one to the next. And here, there's the safety of this handlebar. They're holding with both hands firmly. They're not going to fall. But then there's the other one, and they're swinging towards it. Sooner or later, they have to let go of these and jump to the next one, That also indicates the person has to relinquish. So in life, we do have examples, plenty of examples. When you walk from one room to the next, how do you do it? You can't be in one room and in the other at the same time, fully. When you're walking, that's a perfect example. You don't let one foot be stuck while the other one is trying to reach over and move forward. You can't move. We have examples like the breath. We don't hold on to the breath. But for some reason, we are holding on to this idea that I exist as this person, as this personality, with my likes and dislikes, and my attachments to things. In fact, it's so strong, that drive, that it leads a person to go from life to life. That's what we've done. And that is at the basis of rebirth. We don't want to let go. Letting go has everything to do with being with present, that is, with what is happening. Again, that juvenile or childlike faculty of imagining is something we constantly bring into every interaction we have with the world. It's easy. We're used to it for such a long time to give a personality, a subject and an object. I like you. I don't like you. Already says so much about me and my relationship with you, with the world, and what I expect. All these things are like the ropes that shackle us up. So imagine agitation is something that I would look at. And usually it also indicates that there is no sati present. If sati and sampajanya are present, then what they also bring with them is equanimity. It has to be there. Equanimity. Without equanimity, there cannot be a state of non-identification. You have, because equanimity, having and maintaining equanimity means you're no longer going to be leaning into this or that. You're just staying put. And there is a curiosity, of course. You're fully there. You're listening. You're hearing when you're hearing. You're not adding cast of characters. But that's what the whole world is all about, though. It's presenting us with things, it's offering us things, ideas, this and that, and it's expecting us to have a position towards these things. And when you are positionless, that's very uncomfortable for the people around you and the world to deal with you, because they don't know. You're not giving them anything to hold on to. Is this making sense?
Yeah, I think it's just brought something to mind. I feel like in the moment when I was practicing trying to embody the teachings in just listening to the sounds, I feel like I had sati and sampajanya, but when you said that for other people it's hard to grasp, I think it was for me as well, and I lost it, I dropped it, and that's when the doubt came in, and I formulated the question. In the moment it wasn't there, but I just couldn't maintain it because it was uncomfortable. And then the doubt, and that was the fear coming up that I'm not doing it correctly. And
Yeah.
that's where the question came from. And then I've imprinted that on actually my experience in the moment. So yeah, it's all very, very interesting. So thank you.
Sadhu, yes. No one can bring enlightenment to you, awakening. No one can do it for you, because each of us, we have our own knickknacks of experience. We have our own intricacies and idiosyncrasies, rather. And no one has lived your life, and lives, in fact, through samsara. I mentioned the groove, the various different pathways of thinking, processing, understanding, or the sankharas. And on top of that, the kammas that we had to, we did and we have to face until we free ourselves from all this nonsense. You know yourself better, the best, but not while you're in delusion. So the moment we kick sati out the door, sampajanya, awareness, full awareness out the door, what do you have to rely on then to understand, to grow? That's when people go into attachments. And they hold on to this teacher, that teaching, this habit, that group, that community, these habits, these activities, and there goes another 40, 50 years, and they die. And they call that living fully. Absolute rubbish. That's why the Buddha said, anyone who has lived 100 years unmindfully cannot compare to someone who has lived a single day or a single hour or a single minute fully mindfully. Because you wake up, you come out of delusion. But as you said, it's hard to maintain for now. Because the mind says, no, it's very hard to maintain. You can't do that. You can't do that. Yeah, it's too hard. It's too difficult. Who said that? Prove it. How much effort does it take for you to be aware of, well, your hand resting on one on the other? How much fuel did you spend? You didn't have to pay for gas. You didn't have to pay for food. It's just you're bringing attention. But its simplicity, its tranquility is something that is, oddly enough, unbearable for the deluded mind. That part of us that says, no, there's got to be action. Give me something to chew on. Give me something that's intriguing, that I can build stories behind this. The whole world is about that, is promoting that. One time, a person, an elderly man, who would read newspapers every time I would go to their store. We were doing business, I was a designer then, so they were a jewelry company, this and that. So we would end up talking, and he would say, "Do you read newspapers?" And I would say, "No." This was before the age of internet, World Wide Web, and news. And I said, "No." And he says, "No, that's you just wasted your life." And I said, "Why?" "Well, you have to know what's happening to the world." And I said, "According to whom? According to the writers of these articles, these pieces? Anyhow, if it's that important," I said, "you're going to fill me in on it. You're going to tell me about it. If it's that big of a news." And he said, "I go, it's like, you don't appreciate the newspaper." But what the newspaper or the world now does, it's exposing us to all these different things which necessitate, in a sense, for us to have a position towards these things. So the less exposure you have to the world. Oh, did you watch the latest movie that was out recent? No. How life-changing was it for you? You're just carrying the story of this is how it impacted you. This was this character. Oh, okay, cut it short. You're killing this beautiful moment that we have to be real. The movie wasn't real. You sat in darkness, you watched something, you paid a hefty price for it, and after 2.5 hours, you walked out having lost a big chunk of your life. And your mind is all confused, dazed and confused, lost in news stories, as if your life story was not enough. Your relationships were not enough. Now you're thinking about the characters. What did the director mean by this? Who cares? But that's what we do. That's what the world says. Oh, how could you say who cares? You have to know. You have to know what's out there. What's, earlier we were talking about fashion and things, how sometimes it's important for individuals. It's like, who cares? Giorgio Armani, with all his wealth, all his properties, all his name around the world, the biggest, fanciest, whatever, he croaked and died at the end. His name couldn't save him. His fancy suits couldn't save him. His stores in Milan and all these things couldn't save him. He's now in one of the lower realms. Sorry. Where did the attachments take a person? We never ask. But before we go beyond, we have to look at this. This is where the safety is. This is where you can find safety for yourself. Liberation is here, not afterwards. So look at your attachments to things, to identifications. People walk with a flag of some kind, identification some kind, and they say, yeah, this is who I am. You just took several 100,000 years backwards. You are not evolved, apparently, because you're still identifying. So you can't work around it. You can't beautify it. You can't make it sublime identification. And that's what the Buddha's invitation for us is. Don't make it into something that it is not. Even the Dhamma, it has to change your life now. Ask yourself, am I, by doing this, by thinking this, by feeling this way, and thinking about the feeling this way, am I identifying with it, with something? And if that's too advanced or too abstract for you, then ask yourself the other question: am I agitated because of things related to this identification? The answer should be a lot quicker, because you can't hold a neutral position if you're identified with anything. Sooner or later, somebody's going to step on your toes about that position. So I hope it makes more sense. Any other thoughts, questions, comments? Well, there's an announcement I want to make about, you've heard me mention it several times, but the numerical discourses, they're done. So they're now going through the proofreading, but the first book is now completed. And I'm happy, finally, after 7 years of work on it, I'm happy to announce, to declare that they will be hopefully posted by tomorrow, Sunday, and you will have, it will be the PDF, and we don't have the actual, hard copy, obviously, because it requires money to print, etc. We'll figure out something in the future, but I also made a small digital image of it so that you could see the thing once it's up. So it will be on the website, Mind Released. It will be book 1 of Anguttara Nikaya, full suttas, complete, without skipping any parts, no ellipses, no dots anywhere. And all the merits to be gained from that wonderful labor of love I share with you, all of you, with all those who have been supporting me in this work of ours for all these years. And so I'm so glad that I'll be able to, in addition to the recordings that I've done years ago, this is our updated, completely re-edited and redone. So it will be there for all and for posterity. So I'm happy to share it with you all. So more to come in the coming. So yes.
Thank you, Bhante. Okay.
Can they hear me?
Yes. I just wanted to say thank you, Bhante, for the sutta, and also just quickly share with Kalyana Mitas that I think it's very interesting that tomorrow is also Bhante's birthday, and it's beautiful that on his birthday Bhante is gifting us with the Dhamma. He continuously is helping educate us in making this birth the last. And I think that truly makes a birthday worthy of celebration, when it's not just celebrating birth because we want to actually put an end to birth, but in this case it's a birth that is geared towards ending all birth, and i.e. ending all pain. So I think it's truly wonderful, and thank you for being born, Bhante.
I don't know about that. But you know, with the presence of the Dhamma in one's life makes it worthwhile. The hardships all of a sudden disappear. So, and it's a great joy to be introduced to it, to finally see it again and find it. It wasn't easy. And then to share it, which is, it's so much joy. I get so much joy out of sharing it. And wherever I've been in the world, and whoever I've met, whenever there's one person in the crowd who's listening, who's there, I don't care. I'll go there because it's so beautiful, as you're discovering, all of you. So, if there are there any comments, questions before I go? Wait. Okay, so let us transfer the merits. Akasatha Chabumata Devanagamahiddika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakantu Lokasasana. Akasatha Chabumata Devanagamahiddika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakantu Desana. Akasatha Chabumata Devanagamahiddika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakantu Mamparanti. May the Triple Gems blessings be with you all and your loved ones. May your hardships ease, and all of you, and all those whom you know or heard about who are suffering, may it be eased. And whatever merits we have accumulated, may they be shared with you and all your loved ones and all those who are suffering in the world, in various parts of the world, facing so much hardship, pain, loss, suffering of all sorts. May they find themselves happier. May their pain be eased, be they human or non-human. And may they finally come to taste the Dhamma and free themselves from the yoke, from the burden, from the heavy burden. May they set themselves free with understanding, wisdom, work on maintaining sati, mindfulness, while living according to the three trainings of sila, virtuous behavior, purification of mind through cultivating the mind, samadhi, and through the understanding and insights gained, which is discernment, wisdom, as they continue living life generously, starting with a smile. Sukhi hotu. Until next time.